Yes, we'll look back to this fake battle for the leadership of the Labor Party in New South Wales. It's said that there are two starters, but I suspect the former failed leader, Michael Daley, who needs 15 votes from his caucus to be able to put his name forward as a candidate. I suspect he won't get 15. So an ugly runoff between him and Chris Minns won't occur. That would be the best outcome for Labor. But I noticed research fellow Osmond Chu, also an ALP member, writing a headline opinion piece, Why I Cannot Support Michael Daley for the Labor Leadership in New South Wales. He makes the point that Asian Australians are estimated to be 14.7% of the population, even higher in metropolitan areas. And I've got to say, by the way, Asian Australians know how to work. You will recall that prior to the 2019 election, Michael Daley argued that, quote, Asians with PhDs were taking jobs from other Australians. If you apply the sporting analogy, where you look at the scoreboard, the Daley scoreboard is diabolical. He was the leader at the last election, unable to prosecute a case, unfamiliar with the detail of those cases he tried to prosecute, and suffered a massive swing against him in his own electorate. Yet here's the Labor Party grappling for votes, and Osmond Chu from the Chinese cultural group arguing that Daley in 2019 failed to understand that what he said about Asians with PhDs was racist and hurtful to Asian Australians. He further said that Daley as a contender is symptomatic of a wider failure of the Labor Party to take the cultural diversity of the electorate seriously. And Mr Chu made the very strong point that a recent report by the Lowy Institute found that only 21% of Chinese Australians supported Labor. He made the further point that Labor's pathway to diversity requires both holding on to culturally diverse marginal seats like Strathfield and Cogra, as well as winning others, such as Oatley, Ryan and Parramatta. But the stinging comment by Osmond Chu is here, quote, if Daley is New South Wales leader, the message is that Labor cares more about settling internal scores than it does about Australians from culturally diverse backgrounds, unquote. Well, Troy Bramston has a scholarly understanding of the operations of the Labor Party, and he writes today, quote, there's no doubt Minns is the superior candidate. Minns at 41 represents generational change. He has a young family, lives in the suburbs, is community-focused and has a master's degree from Princeton. Daley at 55 is a reminder of Labor's most discredited period of power. He was a minister in the corrupted Keneally government. But as Troy Bramston writes tellingly, quote, it's absurd that Daley thinks he can return to the leadership. He led Labor to its second worst defeat in more than a century, writes Troy Bramston. Troy then goes on, the next election, well after the pandemic, will be a real contest, but only if Labor has a credible leader, and he says that must be Minns. And I think that about sums it up.